The world of politics is an ever-changing mass of alliances and enemies. Dominated by rapidly changing conditions and situations, the world's geopolitical landscape has given birth to the oddest of friendships and the most unlikely of enemies. One of these unexpected friendships is the sudden and noticeable shift in the relationship between the United States and India. Once considered distant allies, the two nations have now embarked on a path of increased cooperation and strategic partnership. However, this newfound friendship has raised questions about the underlying motives behind it. What is the real reason America is trying to become friends with India? And how is this going to change the face of the earth as we know it? It's no news at this point that the world we know is rapidly changing and forcing many of its world leaders to adjust with the times or run the risk of being left behind. This is especially true for the U.S., as the bond between India and the United States has been given a boost thanks to the tireless efforts of U.S. President Joe Biden, who has taken it upon himself to foster a strategic partnership that shockingly encompasses security, defense, and technology. This, however, is not unexpected, as the U.S.-China relationship is already suffering through serious turmoil, and India is emerging as a crucial ally in a world that is fraught with uncertainty. However, the big question on everyone's minds is, how should India respond to America's warm embrace? Should India view it as an opportunity to strengthen its position on the global stage, or should it be wary of getting too close to a country that has a history of always protecting its own interests? Well, in order to understand the position that the country now finds itself in, you'll have to look no further than the fact that India's relationship with the U.S. is more important now than ever before. And perhaps nothing shows this more than the recent visit of National Security Advisor Ajit Doval to Washington, which in actuality was not just any ordinary diplomatic trip, but a significant sign of the dynamic and evolving relationship between the United States and India. See, during his week-long stay in the American capital, Doval led discussions on the India-U.S. Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technology, ICT, which, by the way, is a crucial platform that aims to bring together the brightest minds from both countries to work on innovative solutions to global challenges. Normally, Doval's visit would not have been big news, as it is normal for countries to work with the U.S. in order to find solutions to world problems. But what made Doval's visit particularly noteworthy was the presence of the heads of both the Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, and the Defense Research and Development Organization, DRDO. This subtle but not unnoticed move highly emphasizes the importance and seriousness with which India views its strategic partnership with the U.S., as well as the potential of ICT to actually create meaningful impact on a global scale. See, the big deal about the presence of this individual is that, with India's expertise in space and defense technology and the U.S.'s technological prowess, ICT presents a unique opportunity for both countries to collaborate and take bold steps towards actually developing breakthrough solutions for pressing global issues. And so, although subtle, this partnership can prove to be a game-changer, not only for India and the U.S., but also for the world at large. And to add credit to the reality of the India-U.S. Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technology, there were 4 key officers from the Indian government who were in attendance during the recent Washington meeting, including 3 officials who work closely with the Prime Minister's office. The presence of these officers, who, by the way, were the principal scientific advisor to the Prime Minister, the scientific advisor to the Defense Minister, and the Secretary of the Department of Telecom, highlights the significance that India places on this initiative. And it also highlights the country's determination to forge ahead with its technological advancements, leveraging the power of ICT to bring about positive change on a global scale. After all, it is not every day that a high-level delegation of Indian scientists and security chiefs holds joint meetings with top U.S. officials, including National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, and Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo. This rare occurrence is a testament to the deepening trust and collaboration that are growing between the two countries. Not to mention that as the world becomes increasingly interconnected, the need for greater international collaboration in critical and emerging technology has never been more pressing. And so, the ICT initiative provides a beacon of hope and the possibility of a better future, which would be spearheaded by the joint efforts of India and the U.S., as proven by the recent visit of Ajit Doval and the high-level delegation from India. According to reports, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce held a roundtable with industry executives across a spectrum of advanced technologies, including semiconductor design and manufacturing, commercial electronics, advanced telecommunications, aerospace, defense, and information technology services. This meeting was held to foster support for the India Cellular and Electronics Association, which at the moment is working to promote India's homegrown technological strengths. However, although the U.S. seems to be doing all that is in its power to bring India onto the world stage as an ally, many fear they might have ulterior motives for their interest. See, the backdrop to this collaboration between India and the U.S. is the growing realization of the threat posed by China's decades-long practice of stealing advanced U.S. technology. This threat, however, was ignored by Washington in the past as it sought to bring Beijing into the global ecosystem. And sadly, by the time China's deception was discovered, it was too late. China had reverse-engineered some of America's most advanced technologies. And in an ironic turn of events, shortly after the Indian delegation's departure from Washington, the U.S. shot down a high-tech Chinese surveillance airship balloon controlled by artificial intelligence monitors in China. And now that the U.S.-China relationship has hit rocky waters, the country has turned to an old enemy for help. See, the growing trust and collaboration between the U.S. and India is actually a stark contrast to the prickly relationship between the two countries during the Cold War, when the U.S.-led West tilted heavily towards Pakistan. And sadly for the U.S., that era is over, and Islamabad has rapidly turned from a geostrategic asset for the U.S. into a geostrategic liability. Following the war, India went on to do well for itself as its homegrown technological strengths are now becoming increasingly recognized, with the Unified Payments Initiative, UPI, and Open Network Digital Commerce, ONDC, leading the way as world-leading innovations. So now, years after choosing the wrong side, the U.S. recognizes that India will be the third largest economy in the world by 2028, and quite possibly earlier. With a market of 1 billion consumers, of whom over 300 million are aspirational middle class, India has made itself the world's most attractive emerging market. Not to mention the fact that their increasingly powerful military, expanding infrastructure, owning the world's largest pool of software engineers, and a strong legal and regulatory system have set the country on the path of becoming a global superpower. However, besides the U.S. motive for allying with India, there is another issue that threatens the safety of the alliance, and that issue is Russia. See, during the early months of the Russia-Ukraine war, Washington tried to persuade India to stop buying Russian crude oil, but India stood firm, arguing that national interest dictated its economic and foreign policy, which makes sense because, after all, nearly 30% of India's total oil imports come from Russia, and India even refines some of it in its own petroleum refineries before shipping it out again to Europe. And since the refined petroleum is technically sourced from India, it escapes U.S. sanctions. And so in this, the U.S. has found itself beaten, as Washington has since fallen in line and turned a blind eye to India's trade with Russia. However, some hawks in the Pentagon are unhappy with this arrangement. They see it as a way for India to undermine U.S. efforts to isolate Russia. But the Blinken-run State Department argues that the growing threat of the China-Russia axis means that Washington must build an accommodative relationship with India across all domains, even if it means overlooking trade with Russia. And so, as the U.S. and India navigate their complex relationship, it remains to be seen how they will balance their interests and priorities when it comes to Russia, and how they will work as allies sharing not just the world stage, but ideas and technology. But one thing is clear, as global superpowers, both the U.S. and India must constantly make tough decisions and compromises to maintain their positions on the world stage. And so one can only wonder how long it will be before one steps on the other's toes. But what do you think? Is the alliance a beacon for the world to look to, or is it a ticking bomb silently waiting to send the world to war?